Okay. So you guys have been away and nothing has changed here. So for me, like, a large part of what Tai Chi is all about is just you know, sort of diminishing the ego, really. So really separating into two halves. So you don't reserve a central position. You completely split, and there's no longer a place where you objectify from. So there's no subject-object divide. Everything that you see imprints itself upon you. And so it's a bit like when you learn to play the piano. They say the big breakthrough comes when your two hands dissociate and you can now do something different with each hand, because what wants to happen is they both want to do the same thing. It's the same with a violin. You know, when you start to do vibrato, you find this hand wants to do the same thing. So when the two sides of your body really dissociate, and then they can work together in cooperation without being locked together. So this is what we're trying to do when we do an exercise like this, or the same thing really when we're going, when one foot is forwards. So first of all, we just concentrate on one of the legs. So let's just feel the one we're sinking into. So we sink into it like a spring or a trampoline skin, and it throws me back. So I want to feel the natural return that's coming from the fabric of the body rather than from the mind making a decision. It's the leg that throws me back, not my mind. And the leg throws me back because it's springy. It contains a spring. And the spring is in the heel. So the more weight I put into the foot, the more I settle into the heel. And the heel penetrates the ground. So I inject into the ground through the heel. This is what's important. So instead of seeing the ground as just a hard surface upon which I use force, the ground is something that I can go into, that I can penetrate and inject. And then it is very much like in those movies where they're drilling for oil, and then they hit the oil and suddenly it just spouts out of the ground. It's a bit like that. If you sink into the heel and inject, there's a point where something comes up and throws you back. So it's almost like it's not from the leg at all. It's actually from underground. It's just a feeling. And really, it's, this is what they say, you know, ultimately it's all in the mind. So it feels like my body is becoming springy, but really it's my mind that's becoming springy. My mind is willing to change, a change of heart, metanoia, as the Greeks called it. So I'm going this way, but way. I'm so willing to have a change of mood. And it should just be really enjoyable. Like bouncing on a trampoline is enjoyable. So the student that I have who's the ballet dancer, she has a like a good image. So she likens the body to a couple dancing. Yeah. So when a man and a woman dance, the man leads. He's doing all the hard work. He's doing all the lifting and the moving. And the woman just lightly follows him and tries to look as light and make all her movements as graceful and effortless as possible. So the legs are like the man and the upper body are like the woman. So they're quite different. So the upper body is relaxed and flowing, and the lower body is tense and working really hard. And we just have to sort of just forget the legs, really, or forget the pain. So I feel, and then something can come up. It's only when I inject down that the energy will come up. Ooh. Yeah, so when you're on a swing or you're on a trampoline, you just really, because you're not really making much of an effort to make the movement, you just really feel the air flowing past you. Yeah. And that's part of the enjoyment. So if we can really just get the legs working well and not be aggravated by their effort and their pain, then we can feel that too. You just feel the air brushing against the skin, your face and your arms. It's like, when I'm working outside here, it's often very still and hot. And then every now and then there's a gust of air and you're just so grateful for it. Nothing could be more pleasurable than that cool air in your face. So it's the simple things, the simple pleasures. So the journey into depth is also a journey into simplicity. And then just switch our attention to the other leg. So feel this one now stretching and then just recoiling, just like a piece of elastic. So here it's stretching and then it recoils. So now I'm with the empty leg. And I just want to feel how different it feels. Yeah, so this leg is all about sort of extension. So it's just extending out of myself. Because the more it stretches, the further its point of contact is from me. So I am sort of expanding. So we tend to favor this type of movement because it keeps you down. When you bounce from leg to leg, you tend to come up, whereas this will actually pull me down. So I want to feel the stretch in the leg, also stretching my mind. Something in my mind expands, just along a line. Like the tentacle of the octopus. Imagine the emotion the octopus would have to feel inside for that tentacle to reach out the way it does. Just feel the turn. So as you extend, the extension wants to come out of your back. So this is what they say in Tai Chi, the arms and the legs come from your spine. Okay, so let's just bring it to riding horse. So mind in the Dantian. I mean, it all hinges on that really. Just being able to withdraw the mind and just lock it into place, some place inside, so that your energy can come out and engage the world. So we're trying to engage the world softly, in other words, energetically, rather than with the normal thinking mind. The normal thinking mind will always judge and criticize. So the thinking mind is a mass of grievance, yeah? A mass of complaint. Yeah? And so what that does, it actually damages the world it's actually engaging with. And it also blocks off the heart. Yeah? So we just want to withdraw that, get it under some sort of control so that our energy can reach out. And then the things that you encounter, they don't just impact upon your mind. You don't just start thinking about them and moaning about them. They actually impact upon the heart. Yeah? And then you start to develop what they call soul. Yeah? So all three centers, the three dantians, are sort of receding into themselves. And that's causing the back of them, the min meng and the back heart and this point here, to sort of squeeze backwards. So that's where the energy comes out of, and the energy comes into the... So the Tibetans have like a visualization where they just, each center, they visualize like a little Buddha sitting in meditation, peering out. And so you have to make a cave for each one. And the more you get into it, the stiller those Buddhas become. They're sort of receding. They're receding into their cave. So just feel the lower back from the min meng down. So that's sort of hanging. And because of the shape of the sacrum with the tail, there's a feeling of it curving under. So the tail between your legs. So this is the most important thing really to try and develop. It's just meditation. Yeah? An absolute willingness to retreat into yourself and leave the world behind. you're not having to come out all the time for confirmation or for affirmation. Yeah. Okay. And now let's just breathe it. So here, just developing the spine is a bit like a whip. Yeah, so the head's coming forwards a little bit, and then the head's going back. So here you're pulling the belly a bit, and then here you're tightening the lower back a bit. So here your tail is unraveling a little bit, and then here it's tightening a little bit. So we would just like the lower back, well, from the min meng down, to be really sort of loose and flexible and mobile. That's really where the emotions start. They start in your tail. Or they should. So if the tail is all crunched up and locked, then the emotions will tend to be generated by the ego instead. So here you're like just one big muscle. The whole body is just contracting, and then the whole body is expanding. But you can think of it more like a ring muscle. Yeah, so you just become one big sphincter, one big arsehole. So here you're like a tightening arsehole, and here you're like an expanding arsehole. So just very simple, like one of those sort of flatworms that lives in the mud on the bottom of a pond. You know? Nothing could be simpler. You're just feeding and shitting all day long. Nothing complicated. No philosophical thoughts. So a breathing machine. Here you're sucking the air in. And then here you're squeezing it out. And remember, the reason we get things wrong is not because things are difficult, but because things are too easy. So if you just make the small hole, so make it difficult to breathe, then you'll just be more mindful, you'll put more effort into it and more attention, you'll be more careful. You know, just scanning the spine. Is there any part of the spine that's a bit reluctant to get involved? And just, you know, putting your attention there and just letting it soften. So everything that we do, the operative word really is relax. Yeah. So relax into the springy tension which operates the machine. So the thing about the ring muscles is if you can just exercise them rhythmically and continuously, then they'll bring you into like a trance state. You'll sort of lose the world a little bit. So it's almost like an intoxication. The blood chemistry changes and you shift from boring into interesting. And then just let it turn. Yeah? So just try and just sort of allow it. Yeah? What does it want to do? Yes, because we're not just one arsehole, we're two arseholes. And they're sort of fighting with each other a bit. Yeah. So I've got a left and a right. And one is slightly dominant and then the other. And you just want to just feel that almost like a wriggle that's going on inside you, that's forcing some sort of turning action. So just think of the snake sloughing its skin. So think of the internal wriggling that needs to go on for it to actually shed that skin. Yeah, so our machines are really organic. They're as far from I'm sort of mechanical machine as possible. The machine is the enemy. The image of the machine is always used by Lawrence, people like that. It was always the enemy of man. Now it's like digital machines, I guess. So it's like the machine enabled us to build an artificial world that models the rational mind. And digital technology has made it possible to model a world that is based upon the ego, uses the ego as its model, with social media and everything. This incessant need to talk, this inability to be quiet inside, completely devoid of heart and soul. So if you think like the machine is really clear. It's like the production line always produces the same thing. Whereas, our machines are always slipping in and out So there's this phenomenon of switching. So it seems like you're doing one thing, but it switches and you're doing the opposite, but it's all part of the one bundle. So there comes a point where all you know is that you're making a damn good effort and you're not concerned with what's coming out. Okay, so let's bring it back, see if we can settle it down. Yeah. So you just would like the ability to basically turn into a wild animal, to turn into something that's got an energy that is somehow uncontrollable, that's always threatening to explode in a temper or in an act of violence. Yeah. So there's part of you that's really on a hair trigger. That's very important for a martial artist to be ready. Okay. And now let's just work on the two arseholes. So basically this action, this is the basic human action. Reaching out, clasping something, grasping it and bringing it in. But we have two sides, so we can do both together, but alternating. So as one's reaching out to grasp, the other one is pulling in. It's like climbing a rope. Yeah, so this is the basic action when you're walking, for example. This is exactly what you're doing when you're walking. And in Tai Chi as well. So Tai Chi is, you just sort of just moving the lower body and waving your arms around elegantly with the upper body. So it's basically this, yeah. So as you clasp, you claw and slowly make a fist and you pull in. So this side of my dantian is pulling. So I'm just shifting the focus of the dantian side to side. So I'm drawing in and it tends to make me turn this way and it brings me into the same foot. And then the energy that comes out of that foot comes into the opposite hand, which is reaching out in order to do its grasping. So just feel the hand really expanding and the foot, and then they just grasp, they claw. Like a kitten. And so when a cat does this, it's just expressing happiness, really, contentment. So that's the way we should feel. We're using the body the way it's designed to be used. Yeah, so when I reach, I send the hand up and out. And when I grasp, I pull the hand in and down. So the extending tends to come from the lower back and the grasping tends to come from the belly. So the problem is that the pulling in, this part, will actually happen by itself. Yeah? If I just let the hand go, it'll just drop. Yeah. And so this is why, like, yielding, drawing in, yeah, withdrawing is always seen as like a passive, grumpy, sort of melancholy, bad mood type thing. So what we would like to do is just feel as though there's no gravity. So you really have to pull here to actually get the hand to come down and in. And then almost feel like there's a lift. There's a lift inside you that brings the hand up. You don't need much effort. It's like a mood of optimism that's just rising up that side of the body as the other side does the opposite. So we really want to feel the two sides needing each other. It's only when one side closes that the other side can open. So you need that grip upon yourself and upon the ground, the root, yeah? So that the energy can come and express in the opposite side. So when you're meditating, you're quiet and you're withdrawn, but you're not unhappy. This is what people can't understand yet. Because when someone's quiet and withdrawn, they're either sulking or they're just miserable about something. So just that ability to just completely just detach and be inside and quite happy being inside. That's for me, the most important skill to develop. Because everything else comes from that. Without that, you just have ego. You have the world built with ego, both outside and inside. Okay, so let's bring it back. Coming back to the Dantian. So when you come back to the Dantian, there's a slight adjustment in the posture. So it's really coming back to the Min Meng. Yeah? That's just feeling the Min Meng being the place from which the lower back hangs. So you've withdrawn from the activity because the activity has stopped, and you've come back to the cave of the Dantian. Okay, and now let's just turn. So here we're just trying to just feel the pure turn. So that your Dantian area, really your spine, so the part that's between the Min Meng and the Dantian has to stay in the middle and not move too much side to side. So here you're just really enjoying the centrifugal. So that feeling of like a separation happening because of movement. Your energy is being thrown out and your mind is gathering in. And you're just enjoying it again. Simple pleasures. And just feeling the lift, the rise of that light energy through the body that tends to gather at the heart or the thymus. So that's our prize, is that light lifting energy. What Nietzsche called an even cheerfulness. He just chose words so well. Nietzsche is like a real poet. There's not a single word that's superfluous, yeah. And so you can still generate the turn with your two arseholes, with your left and your right dantian. Or you can just sort of it should just feel as effortless as possible. So then you can really feel the energy. If you're having to put too much effort in, it's difficult to concentrate on the energy as well. And the tension involved in the effort will tend to crush everything in. So this is really expansive and lifting. So turning doesn't just yield, it produces a lift. It works on the heart, on the spirit. And just let the world go. So letting the world go, that is meditation. The world ceases to exist. So when me and John will be working together and we discover some amazing secret, as John used to love to call them, and he'd often say, can't understand how meditators can get anything like this. Because you need to move to find out these secrets. But it also works the other way. I just don't know how Tai Chi people get it without meditating. Without achieving some real stillness, the movement is always going to be coming from the wrong place. Yeah. So my mind can just settle in this central dantian. As John would say, it doesn't get any better than this. Yeah, so there's just this feeling of absolute contentment within doing what you're doing. There's nothing else you'd rather be doing. Okay, so let's just bring it back. Let's just feel the body sort of buzzing from the previous exercise. Okay. And now let's just go backwards and forwards to keep it simple. Yeah, so here it's just somehow easier to feel the full and empty than it is when we just go side to side. Yeah, so when we go slowly, our mind tends to be with the body, with the weight. So my mind tends to come into the front foot when I bring my body there. So we want just to switch it over, just to get a bit of balance. So my mind goes into the empty foot. Imagine you're going to lift it off the ground and kick someone with it. So that's where your mind would be. You wouldn't need to have your mind with your body. So here my mind goes into this foot, and then here my mind comes into this foot. And just feel it moving. It's like a flow. There's a flow of energy, which is mind, that goes down to the foot. There's a flow here. Yeah, so you can feel it as I come into a leg, I sort of squeeze the energy out of it, and it's got nowhere to go but down the other leg. Yeah, so it's the leg that's bending that's pulling me. Yeah, and that's, you know, it's just, you want to just feel the emotion. So it's like as the leg bends, it's almost like you become a little bit coy. So you're just withdrawing coquettishly in order to tease. Ooh. So like the butterfly that's flitting, there's this sense of something flitting around you. So the Greek word for soul was psyche, which also meant butterfly. Yeah. So there's this flitting, fleeting, fluttering quality to spirit or soul. It's never still, it really dances. It just expresses life at its most profound, really, at its most active. So the word psychedelic, it literally means making the soul visible. Yeah. So they've found now that there are chemicals in the brain that just don't occur in like the animal world, but they do occur in magic mushrooms. Yeah. And so they put the development of like the human imagination, you know, it's like our capacity for poetry, down to the fact that at one time magic mushrooms were much more common than they are now, and they formed you know, a significant part of the diet. Okay, so let's try the other foot. So for me, the poets are the sages. It's not the scientists and the doctors. I mean, they just make matters worse. It's the people who work with the imagination, who work with the soul. Yeah, this is the beautiful thing about movement. Movement is of the soul, is of spirit. Yeah. Yeah, so you can see something that moves, but you can't inspect it. In order to inspect it, you have to stop it. And generally, when you stop it, you kill it. Yeah. So this is what the rational mind, this is what science requires. For me, it's the image of the butterfly that has been killed in the jar and then pinned to the board as a trophy. So all its beauty gone. So playful movement. So the butterfly, it's making all these fluttering movements that it doesn't need to. It could just go in a straight line, but it never goes in a straight line. It's like the octopus. When you saw the octopus moving, it was just play. It was just playing all the time. That's the sort of mind it had. It had a playful mind. It didn't think, it played. It's like playing music. You know, in English, you don't make music, you play music. It's quite an interesting use of the word. There's an element of play in making music. It's listening and responding, but not with the mind, with the playfulness, with the imagination. Yeah. Okay, so now let's just bring it back. Again, just bringing it back to the dantian. Yeah. So when we do something, we tend to arch up from the back. So we tend to rear up a little bit in order to do some sort of fancy activity with the hands. And when you come back to the dantian, what that is really just meaning is that you just let that curve in the lower back just flatten out and let the min meng settle back and just feel it just withdrawing you. And basically you've got meditation when you get to the point where that's what you want. You don't want to be out communicating and doing fancy stuff. You're quite content just to be inside. So when I went to England, my sister was there from Australia. She's got two sons. So one of them, Felix, he's very active. You know, they're both great kids. And he's always talking, he's always playing, he's always And the other one is like the complete opposite. He's quiet, quite withdrawn, and very, very soft. And but he's not miserable. Yeah. And my sister said, you know, he's quite happy just getting his fishing rod, going out in the morning down to the lake. They have a lake in their garden, and just fishing all day. She said he'd be there standing in the same spot all day. Yeah. And so just content just to be inside, experiencing the world without this need to come out and interfere with it. Yeah. That's meditation. And most people can't do it. It's the last thing in the world they want. People pay me a lot of money just to sit with them because they don't have the discipline to do it on their own. It's pathetic. And the trouble is, if you don't know how to meditate, if that's not your natural state, if quiet mind isn't the natural state, then there's always a disturbance to your company. Okay, so let's just bring it back to attention. So remember here, the legs are straight but bending. The feeling is that the back of the legs are trying to bend and the front of the legs are trying to straighten. So basically the quads and the hamstrings are working at the same time. So it's just a feeling. Yeah. So the bending at the back of the legs is tending to draw your energy down, and the straightening of the front of the legs is tending to bring energy up the front. So this is the circuit that we are in when we're standing in Tai Chi. It's basically the opposite of the circuit that you'd be in if you were sitting. Yeah. So the buttocks are relaxing, the sacrum, the tail are relaxing down, the legs are just flowing out of the sacrum. And you're really just sinking down through the heel. You know, like you're sinking into wet sand, you know, when the heel just goes a lot deeper than your toes, like the negative heel, like in Birkenstock shoes. Yeah. So your heels are sinking in, and it almost feels like the ground is coming up a little bit underneath the ball of the foot and the toes. So it's only really when you sink your energy, not just mind in Dantian, that you know the eyes clear and you can see the world untainted by self. Otherwise, we're just seeing something that we've projected. So there's this sense that when you see things, you're taken by surprise because you haven't realized that's what they were, that's what they were like. Yeah. Everything's got a shimmer, a color, a dance. Spirit is dancing everywhere. So when you see something, especially like a natural object, it doesn't really work with man-made ones because they're dead. But when you see a natural, even like a dead leaf on the ground, yeah, there's the sense, obviously, that there's an image coming to the mind, but it's also made an imprint upon your heart. It's come in and you just feel it. You don't just see it, you feel it, yeah? And that's only possible if you can quieten the mind. Yeah? So that's what poets do. The world impacts the poet's heart, and then he's just very good at expressing that in words. So we'd like to be potential poets. We just lack the finesse with words, but we feel just as deeply. So the poet doesn't describe, the poet astonishes. So it has been astonished and it can then communicate that. Yeah, so to start with, when we stand and when you sit as well, you know, one is sort of making an effort to bring some sort of inner quiet. But then eventually that just relaxes and you just sort of go into like a reverie. Yeah? Mind will be going everywhere. Yeah? And it's just the stillness of the body that's slowly teaching the mind, because you know, there's that famous Buddhist poem where it says, you know, to use the mind to work on the mind, how stupid can you get? Yeah? So if you use the mind to quieten the mind, it's like a contradiction. You know? It seems to be quiet, but you've actually just put a brick on it. So we just want to just relax. Yeah? So you just have to tell yourself, okay, I'm going to stand for 10 minutes, yeah? Or I'm going to sit for half an hour, and just do it. And if you don't, then you've broken a promise. Yeah? Okay.